Welcome to Deep Dive Film School. I'm Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Palcher.
And if you like what you see/hear, please like and subscribe. You can find us in all the spaces and places that people what?
Find good media. That's right. Our most active platforms are YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. So join us there for the ride. We are beginning a new festival this week. Very excited. We're going to do a Cyberpunk Festival beginning with Alex Proyas' 1998 film Dark City. This was actually, I think, our second or third episode ever on our old podcast that we did. I don't know if you remember that.
Like 2006?
Seven, I think.
Something like that? Yeah, I do remember that.
Movie.
Yeah.
Not that means anything, but it was like our third episode, so it does mean a little something, I guess.
Same.
Because this was our movie to be like, we're gonna talk about weird shit.
Yeah, like older movies.
Yeah, like older movies from the 90s.
From the 90s. Well, before we really get cracking into Dark City proper, I would like to take just a second and talk about the concept of cyberpunk.
Yeah, please do.
Obviously, cyberpunk lives within the realm of science fiction. Mm-hmm. Usually the punk suffix, so you have cyberpunk, you have steampunk. In the horror genre, you have splatterpunk. Most of this stuff really came about in the late 70s, and that, what sets it apart, and I think some of the classic versions, is you did have guys like Philip K. Dick, Michael Moorcock, Harlan Ellison, J.G. Ballard, that were exploring these themes. And if you think that a lot of their writing started in the late 60s into the 70s, and so a lot of it is influenced by drugs, right? So it's sort of like the lens of science fiction, but you're talking about the senses of the identity and the soul and these things through the science fiction lens. And really, if you think about old science fiction as being like, we're focusing on leaders of movements, captains of ships, presidents of nations, or leaders of rebellions, that kind of a thing. Most cyberpunk from its origin the coined term was a combination of low life and high tech. So the future is amazing and it's dirty and broken, right?
Perfect.
So this is not a post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
This is that the future does have a lot to offer. It's just that at the same time as these things grew, things also got dirty, right? And so lots of graphic novels in the early 80s.
Do you feel like that's a more realistic reality in the future than post-apocalyptic, something like this?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think a lot of it you go, if through the 70s into the 80s it was, oh, everything's amazing and it's broken, a lot of that's going to be informed by things like Watergate, right? Mm. Whereas once you get into the 80s and you had the Cold War with Reagan, that's when you saw a lot of post-apocalyptic because people were terrified about nuclear war, right? And so I think that the sci-fi of the eras very much matched with what people were thinking about at the time. We also got to give it up for the graphic novels of the day. Judge Dredd, Frank Miller's Ronin, later, of course, RoboCop, a lot of Japanese manga. So you're talking about, we're going to be doing Akira. That was another huge mainstay. Heavy Metal Magazine. And then finally the work of the French graphic novel illustrator, Mobius.
I like the low life high tech. I think that's a good way to summate it.
And another thing that I think is important with that is that most of these stories are told at what they refer to as the street level life of a future, right?
Exactly.
So even with Dark City, you do get into a messianic aspect of he is the chosen one, which also we see in things like The Matrix, which is another cyberpunk
12
thing.
Monkeys.
12 Monkeys. Even something like Johnny Mnemonic, where it is like, it is street level and it seems like you're just a regular guy. You end up being the one that changes everything. It starts at this level. And Dark City is interesting because we don't know that it's futuristic to begin with, in a sense, because it feels very noir.
Yeah.
It's sort of hyper noir.
It's got a brutalist feel to it.
Yeah, shots in this feel like Barton Fink.
Or like Gotham City from the Burton's Batman.
Oh, completely.
I think Matrix actually ended up buying and using a lot of these sets as well.
They did.
Not soon after this movie was made, and that makes a ton of sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they do an awesome job with the art direction here. Obviously, everything's on a stage. But they, the growing and moving of the buildings is fucking awesome.
Yep.
This movie has so much style. Directed again by Alex Proyas, who also did The Crow. You can see his dark kind of gothic influence in this, I think.
And then he went on to do like iRobot.
And knowing the one with Nick Cage.
Yes.
Okay. I think I've seen it, but I remember nothing.
Neither one
about
of those are very good movies, which is a bummer because the promise that's shown in Dark City is so over the top. I mean,
well, and it's not, and obviously it's all dark all the time, a la like Seven or something like that, where it's just constantly like you never see daylight.
It's such a claustrophobic. Literally later in the movie, when Murdoch, our main character, asks the detective, "When's the last time you remember daylight?" is like the most claustrophobic feeling to me. Like it is so, and obviously we have to talk about a huge influence here, which is going to be Franz Kafka, right? I mean, all these ideas of the man wakes up, he potentially may have committed a crime, but he doesn't know. Men in black trench coats are chasing him. I mean, that's so much Kafka's The Trial, right?
I mean, you have the mouse in the maze and Kiefer Sutherland.
Completely.
Like, come on. Like,
yeah, it feels
obvious
so
metaphors going on.
Beautifully claustrophobic and paranoid. And that really, like, the themes, I think there's one or two moments we'll talk about later where the themes slip a little bit for me. And I wish, but again, talking about the guy's second movie that he made that he honestly didn't know in the beginning, when he first did his script treatment, there were no special effects. Like everything was going to be implied because he knew he wouldn't get enough money to do it. And I think it was only after The Crow was as successful as it was and the movie did get picked up, and Kiefer Sutherland, that was even a total fluke. Like Sutherland later said, I thought the script was supposed to go to my dad.
Yeah.
Because he was supposed to be a much older character, but he loved it so much that I think he was partially responsible for the level of funding that it received.
And he also mentioned he liked the Alex Proyas said to sell it to Kiefer. He was like, I like him being younger because that means he has more to lose.
Right.
So
he's not.
That was pretty interesting.
Well, and I think it also helps later on at the sort of Deus Ex Machina that happens in the third act that it is a younger guy, because in these weird fake flashbacks, Kiefer plays so many different characters that it works that he's a younger guy.
Yeah, no, that's true. That scene is a nice payoff. But yeah, the movie overall just looks awesome. It looks how you would want a movie called Dark City to look, right?
Yeah, something that's an existential crisis of who am I? I mean,
long corridors, dark buildings,
lots of amber lights, lots of beautiful emerald greens.
Yeah, when he wakes up the first time, he's in this green bathroom, total shining callback, and he's in this purple water.
Yeah,
like even though it's dark, he does find places to inject some color.
Yeah,
and
but it all feels fake, which it is. It was all sets, which is like exactly the way it should feel. It should feel like a stage play almost.
Yeah.
Of it, and obviously, this guy wasn't really somebody that was well known at the time, but it feels like something that would be like a Michel Gondry film, or there's elements.
Sure.
You know what? On rewatching Charlie Kaufman. You know what in this watching, I was like, why did I never make the association? There is so much Terry Gilliam in this film.
100%. I'm actually surprised you didn't mention him when you were going through your cyberpunk stuff earlier, because there's moments in Brazil and
Brazil's definitely a cyberpunk film, and I think that
and we are doing Gilliam later in this festival,
right? So. And I think that the dirty, the only thing I could, and I looked for if there was a terminology for this, there isn't, but I was like, why isn't there a term for the Gilliam style of junk aesthetic, that the future is full of junk, right? Because even the way that the strangers, who are this alien race that inhabits this movie and are really our main threat, when they aren't in their big woolen trench coats, their outfits, they look somewhere between like the old Lynchian still suits from Dune.
Yep, absolutely.
But they also, I was reminded so much of David Warner's character from Time Bandits.
Yeah.
The evil, the darkness.
100%.
That's what they look like in the weird like junk aesthetic.
The strangers are a wonderfully creepy group of bad guys.
Brilliant.
Mostly old white men in black leather.
Yes.
Pale skin, scary voices. One of them flies. A couple of them fly.
Kind of Cenobites. They're sort of Cenobites.
They even have a little kid and they go...
Yeah, which again, very much Cenobite.
Yeah.
And of course, I love that. What's his name? Brendan O'Brien. I believe that's the right name. From who played Riff Raff in the original Rocky Horror Picture Show, as well as wrote the play Rocky Horror Picture Show, as well as all the songs. What the character of it's Mr. Hand, was written specifically for him. Proyas wrote that for him.
You know things are a little off when you start hearing all their names, and it's Mr. Hand, Mr. Sleep, Mr.
Book.
Yeah, just like basic things in a room is their last name.
Yeah.
There's no first name, so you know there's something alien going on. We also get introduced to the always lovely Jennifer Connelly. She's like a lounge singer here.
Yes.
And then we also have William Hurt. I should mention
Detective Bumstead.
Yes, and I should mention Jennifer Connelly is quote unquote married to Rufus Sewell's character, John.
Theoretically, yes.
Yes, and then we get William Hurt as the detective, and it opens up with all these hookers have been killed.
Yes, and all of the women have these spiral wounds all over them, and obviously the spiral is a symbol to talk about the trap that they're all in, but also
he's got it on his fingerprints.
And I'm also curious, like it is, the original manga Uzumaki, written by Junji Ito, the horror manga, came out in 98, and so I don't know if that was part of the influence, but the spiral wounds is pretty on the nose, so maybe it was an influence, but I don't know if Proyas ever talked about it. I think along with that, something that's really interesting to me about this idea of I'm immediately this suspect, and maybe I'm this murderer, and would I actually do that? The way that the intensity of it immediately from the moment that he wakes up, and there isn't a whole lot of exposition ahead of time, and it's great that he gets woken up by the phone call from the doctor, from Sutherland's character, saying they're coming to find you right now. I know you're confused, right? And kind of sets all of that up. The movie never feels like it slows down after that.
No, it doesn't.
To the point where I was like, I remember every time I'd watch it, I was like, what is it? Is it the acting? Is it the score? Is it the direction? Like, why does it feel so fast paced?
Because it's never light.
Right. Yes.
It seems like it's the same night, and he never sleeps.
Right. But then I found out another reason.
Okay.
Dark City has one of the shortest average shot lengths of any modern narrative production at 1.8 seconds.
Yeah.
That means that there is a cut, an edit, almost every 2 seconds. It never lingers. And because I was like, the movie feels like a 2-hour-long trailer. Like it's just like boom, boom, boom. And it just keeps going. And it never leaves you. That panicky paranoia stays with you the whole time. So when I read that, I've been wondering that for 20 years. I was like, why does this movie feel that way when other things don't? Even when it's just the hard-boiled detective of John Hurt, or William Hurt, doing the whole like Hasselbeck, your shoelace is untied, like all that kind of stuff still feels so kinetic and fast-paced. And it's because this 1.8 second shots, which is kind of insane, especially in a day and age now where you have like Terrence Malick, like, we're just gonna sit. 2 minutes goes by, we're still sitting, right? And it makes sense. It's meditative. This is the opposite of that.
No, 100%. I think it changes the movie, right? It affects how you experience the movie, and there's the interesting plots and backgrounds around everything. A little a nugget that I read was that Alex Proyas doesn't think the strangers doesn't see them as evil.
Right.
Even though they do kill people, and they get killed a lot as well by John, but he thinks it's more as tragic villains. What he feels are the best kind of bad guys. They do what they must in order to survive, and they must be human beings the way they do to find a way to continue their own species.
Well, yeah, it's like John Carpenter's The Thing.
Completely.
Like it's not malevolent. It's just trying to survive.
But it's alien, right? And that's kind of what this ends up turning into, is that they're experimenting, like, obviously again the mouse in the maze kind of thing, with these people, and trying to figure out who they are so they can mimic them in some way. And
and be able to keep living because they are a dying species.
They're dying, but they do things throughout. Think of something like when he goes in to the restaurant and it's like you have to pay to open the thing. Like
the automat.
That's like the most basic alien way of like, this is how humans get their food.
Yep.
Someone puts it here and they pay for it.
And it still feels well,
but it's not quite there, right?
Well, and I thought about this a lot on watching it this time, exactly to your point of the alien race attempting to reconfigure people's personalities by changing their memories, right? And obviously Murdoch is the prime example, which is if in a previous life with previous memories he was just a regular Joe Schmo, if we give him the memories of his wife having this affair and of him going off and then killing women, if we just implant that and then throw the dead bodies around, will he keep killing, right? But that becomes interrupted because there's something different about Murdoch. So the different about Murdoch part is the branching off where our movie starts. But the premise beyond that makes you realize why the over-the-top noir pastiche, which again is what reminds me of something like Barton Fink, where it's like, in Barton Fink, those characters, none of them talk like real human beings. They all talk like stereotypes that came right out of a Raymond Chandler hard-boiled detective novel, right?
Sure.
And so does Detective Bumstead, right? He's like, I just take what they give me, Hasselbeck. It's like, it feels like it's from a cheap 1940s noir film, right? And the reason why is because that's all the aliens know how to do, is create stereotypes. And what they have in the Doctor is his ability to try and round out the nuance. I love this scene where he's adding in the different dabs of memories and he's like, maybe a little bit of childhood trauma.
I'm sure that's how it's actually made.
Like, it's so beautiful, but you also go,
and
that's him trying
trauma.
Trying to add a little bit of humanity into otherwise the most corny, tacked on cliche version of humanity, right? Because we see the one couple that's like, Johnson's going to make me work nights again, right? Yeah. And then they give him a bunch of money. They go in and do their special talent of tuning. And they turn the house. And they turn the house in this big, elegant place. And then
I love how the whole city just goes in pause. So
sleep.
Sleep now.
And then when those two caricatures wake up, they're just caricatures of rich people instead of poor people, but they're still caricatures. And he's the only one who has a semblance of a soul within him.
And they're implanting these new memories of these past lives and everything. And it's a very interesting plot for a movie. That's what the plot continues to be interesting. It plays with memory. It makes you question memory. What's real? Are we just our memories? The strangers are aliens. I mean, literally, when they get killed, like some weird amoeba electric thing comes out of their head.
Let's talk about this scene.
They also have an underground layer.
Yes, and let's talk about this scene because I think it's such an interesting exposition dump without needing to be. Like, it does so much in such a short amount of time. As Murdoch is now on the run, he's seen that they're out there, these strangers or whatever.
The city's moving around.
The city's moving around. He's seen the people fall asleep. He's also gotten, and I love the way they show the memories. It's like this backwards music with this watery single image. And Shell Beach is the thing that he sees. And then he sees the billboard and he goes up there. When he goes up to that billboard, so much happens in about 90 seconds, and it's fucking masterful.
It seems you've discovered your unpleasant nature.
Because he gets out the newspaper clippings, right? Killer, killer, killer. This is what they put into his jacket. So there's that. We see what tuning actually is. We see the floor fall away. We see he can do it. We get the hand from the billboard comes down, cuts off, what is it, Mr. Book? Poor Mr. Book, right? Cuts off the back of Mr. Book's head. We see the alien come out. Then the camera swoops underground to their lair. This is in 90 seconds. It shows us all that. We now see the strangers without their in their weird Cenobite outfits and see all of them talking to each other.
And hats on.
Yeah. And I'm like, I was blown away how much Proyas shows his hand all at once there to be like, here's what we're up against. And they even talk to each other and they say, he can too.
It's heady enough that he can do that, though.
It's so cool. You immediately know like what you're up against, but there's still so much mystery that we don't know, like, why are they here and what's their purpose and what does that have to do with Murdoch, right? And I think that it's like to have as dense of a world that you've built that you can show that much all at once. The giant face with the clock in it, like you can show all of that in literally under 2 minutes and be like, there still is mystery. We still haven't given anything away. Is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, and also the idea of him getting John's memories injected into him so he can start being more like him.
And I would say that's the only actual villain in this, and it's of a machination of their own, right? That he gets injected with the actual serial killer. So now he is like, he's killing these other women who are, you know, members of their scientific study. And the other guys even call him out, like, what you're doing is a waste of time. And he's like, leave her with me, right? And you're like, oh, he's the only actual real villain. And what's great is he doesn't get a comeuppance. He gets a Star Trek version of a comeuppance of like, you'll never have a soul. Yeah, and that's why you guys are going to die, which is amazing that like there isn't a huge knife fight at the end of the movie with Mr. Hand. Doesn't need to be.
Yeah. Do you think William Hurt and Jennifer Connelly are even really needed here? Like, it could have just been about John and the Doctor, I think, and been just as interesting. Obviously, they use them as pawns in the game, so I guess that makes sense. But like, are we really supposed to care about them? I guess that's not really the goal here, though.
I like William Hurt's character because it's through William Hurt's character
that we get questions answered as
well. We get questions answered, and we also get to meet what is the character Walensky.
Yes.
We meet the detective that was on the case before Bumstead, and I think Walensky's arc here as the one who's lost his mind. And that it's so great, that subway scene where he's talking to Murdoch.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because literally, I don't know who that actor is that played Walensky, but he manages to explain the entire plot correctly while at the same time sounding like a lunatic.
Yeah.
And then his final line of like, but it's okay, I found a way out. And then he jumps in front of a subway train is like, mwah, it's so well done. And so I think that the femme fatale aspect works to have her there. And it also gives Murdoch the sense of a better life. Like, it gives him a semblance of, well, what it reminded me of, again, to go back to Michel Gondry, or Charlie Kaufman, Michel Gondry, it takes me back to something like Eternal Sunshine, because you're like, Murdoch at some point goes, these are all false memories, but I think I might love you anyway, right? And that idea of like, I have no more identity left because this thing has been done to me, but I'm holding on to some deep core sense of reality.
But that's what the strangers want, is that individuality, and that's why they can't have it. That's why they want the souls.
Well, and what they wanted was to be able to pluck it out of somebody.
Yes.
But once it existed in somebody, it's like, no, that's an unpluckable thing. Like, it doesn't matter how much more you dilute the person if deep down inside them. And you know, the Doctor even says, isn't this what you wanted? Isn't this what you've been seeking?
An alien
for the whole
race
time?
though is not likely to understand individuality.
Well, I also think even if they did, and this goes back to one of our very first reviews as Deep Dive Film School, something I said when we did Ex Machina, which is, just because something has sentience doesn't mean that it doesn't think that you're a bug, right? And that's our main character in Ex Machina. The AI does have sentience, but she's willing to kill every human she comes in contact with to become free, right? So sentience doesn't equal human warmth of sentience, right? And and I think Mr. Hand, in his own way, has become somewhat semi-sentient. But all that did was make him a serial killer. It didn't make him into a good person, right? No. And I think that part's really interesting.
And do they even know the difference of bad and good?
Right, exactly. It's relative because they've created a relative universe.
So let's get closer to the end, not necessarily the mind fight.
Yeah.
We can get into that.
That's my one quibble.
If
but
you want to.
yes.
But the whole idea that they break through, they try and drive to Shell Beach. Do you like this ending? Because this wasn't, I think, supposed to be the original ending. I think it was supposed to be a lot more
vague. Yeah. I remember I saw this movie in the theater, and I remember hearing audible gasps, and I was one of them. I loved it. I thought the reveal was fantastic. I think
I'm surprised they thought another thing was better, because I thought this is a great payoff.
It's fantastic. Well, and I think that the vagueness leading up to it of like, of course I know the way to Shell Beach. Me and the missus did our honeymoon there.
Yeah,
and then no one could. Fucking again, so Kafkaesque, so paranoid and claustrophobic there's no way out of the city.
Yeah, like William Hurt has this, like, is it like a radio something from his mother? It's like one of my most cherished things, but the damnedest thing, I can't remember when she gave it to me.
I love
that kind of stuff. No, I mean that is kind of over this the whole time.
So then ripping away the paper and the brick behind it, and then hitting at it. And you start to get this crescendo of like, they're going to figure out the mystery, and then outer space.
Yeah.
To me, I was like, that is the most pessimistic thing that could be on the other side of that wall, right?
Yeah.
And I loved that. I thought like the
these people were gone so long ago.
The journey that Murdoch goes through as the hero here, it doesn't do a traditional, you think of the hero's journey, right? The classic Joseph Campbell.
It's not traditional
hero's journey. Yeah. There are so many moments of just down in the depths of full despair. Mm-hmm. Every time that he's like, what do I possibly do here? Now, there are the same beats as the classic Joseph Campbell, because even though it's an unlikely mentor, the scientist, the doctor, does become his mentor, but he does it retroactively through a shot, which I thought was like, again, it is a Deus Ex Machina of God coming down to save at the last minute, but it's so fucking smart, and it plays by the movie's rules.
It does.
In such a way that he does become his mentor, and then he relives the entire hero's journey, but all through flashback from the single shot. And I was like, they
tied it back around.
It's so brilliant, and it does not feel forced. It feels fully earned.
I agree. And do look in the mind if you want the soul. And that end line of you went looking in the wrong place. Such a great line.
It's so good.
And you now developing the city in the way he wants and turning it towards the sun.
The water, he turns it towards the sun. A couple of little
great ending,
lingering things here.
So let's get into the mind fight real quick.
Well, before we get into that, I just wanted to mention this before I forgot it. I was reading up on the production designer, Patrick Tatopoulos, talks about specifically getting photos from London, from Greece, from New York, from a European city, from a city 100 years ago, from a brand new city, and mashing all of that together so that it kept up that artificial feel that we talked about, and that even the names of places are just named after their places. So like in the little, the little light bulb sign just says diner.
Yeah.
Right. Or it says movies, because they're like, nothing has a name, like nothing has a real identity to it. And I think that at the beginning of our mind fight, we still see a little bit of this. And I love it. I love when the strangers are tuning and it turns into a chase scene where as Murdoch, he gets to the end of the doorway and opens it. And it's like the Sarah Winchester mansion. It just opens to a flat wall hundreds of feet down. And then the little kid Cenobite comes up and starts chewing on his hand.
Man.
So he jumps off because there's a chimney that's growing next to him. And I was like, this is amazing. So when it came down to the final duel, I was like, that's what this shit's going to be. And instead, it was like a fight of the Schwartz from like Spaceballs. It was like your Schwartz is as big as mine. Yeah. It was like Big Trouble in Little China. I was so disappointed because I was like, you can show the malleable aspect. And I will say a movie
the bad guy.
A movie that came out just a couple of years ago that finally did what I had wished Dark City did, and maybe it's just because they ran out of money, I don't know. But the first Doctor Strange movie, the way that they're fighting by having the buildings actually like collapsing on each other and like up is down and left is right, and they're jumping through the portals, and bricks and mortar and are suddenly like malleable clay. That's what I wanted this final fight to be like. It's the only part of the movie where I think it drops the ball.
Yeah, just a little bit. Like I said, and honestly, I thought they wrapped it up by showing it was in space, and they didn't need that scene.
Yeah,
like he
defeat the bad guy, like you said.
Yeah, but like I think there was some producer input on some.
Yeah, it could have really used that same building quality as the fight.
And I know Proyas has a director's cut that he much prefers. It takes away Kiefer Sutherland's intro, trying to explain everything. And I think it also uses Jennifer Connelly's real voice.
And I've seen it. I've watched it a couple of times, and it's good. There's some stuff in it that is unnecessary. I like that he waits to have the discussion where he levitates his childhood book to show the detective.
Explain this.
In the director cut, he melts the director's glasses, or melts the detective's glasses. It's kind of unnecessary. There's stuff like that in it. I love all the Shell Beach stuff. I love the Neptune's lair with all the and you know, all the like, don't you remember there was the fire, Johnny, and like with his uncle. Like, I love all that stuff. It all feels very much like a dream.
Kind of Inception in a way.
Yeah, but then with a heavy dose of like City of Lost Children in it. Exactly. That's another one it reminded me of. Which I don't know I don't remember which one came first. I think City of Lost Children might be after this. I don't know, but
around the same time.
Yeah, I just it is so 90s.
Yeah.
In so many ways, but also it's a brilliant movie about this concept about identity, and again, the kind of stuff that science fiction loves. It's very similar actually to the original Blade Runner story, the Philip K. Dick Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, right? Of like, if you inject somebody with these memories, does that mean they're real now, right? But told within this very interesting encapsulated universe.
Blade Runner, another great comparison. Like, so there's a lot of movies like this, and I agree, this is a great kind of stab at it. Like, they did a good job.
Final thing I'll say that I think is really fascinating. Did you know that Aronofsky, when he made Requiem for a Dream, he had never seen this. So the scene of Jennifer Connelly at the end of the pier in a red dress was a complete coincidence.
Interesting.
And then was it House of Fog and Sand, or whatever that movie's called?
Yeah.
Sand and Fog recalls back to both scenes. By having her also at the end of a pier looking out towards the ocean. So it was an homage to both. So Jennifer Connelly in 3 separate movies appears at the end of a pier.
Are we sure there's not a pier at the end of Top Gun Maverick?
There might be. As far as I know, it's only a triptych. But if anybody out there that's working with Jennifer Connelly wants to make it into a
it's her thing,
quadruple,
it's her thing, okay.
But what?
That's cool.
How amazing is that? That was just like a freak accident. That I mean, I'll show it right here. They're really close.
Yeah,
they're really close shots. So anyway, kind of a weird coincidence.
Yeah. Awesome. Great start to the Cyberpunk Fest. Really enjoy this movie. If you haven't seen it, it really is a mindfuck and a wild ride, and totally 90s. And, you know, even though it is not our forgotten gem, I feel like that it's kind of forgotten. Now, the one person who didn't forget it is Mr. Roger Ebert, who we both love. The man loved this movie so much. Not only was it his best movie of 1998, which there was a lot of good movies in 98. There was.
He did something he never did, which is he did his own commentary on the DVD. Wow. So if you have this on Blu-ray, one of the commentaries, there's a commentary with Proyas and some of the other production crew, and then there's one that's just Roger Ebert saying, here's how you make movies.
Damn, now I want to go look and see if that's what mine says. So.
I bet it's on there because it was like unheard of. Like, I don't think he ever did that for any other movie.
No, I can't see why you would. That's interesting. All right. Well, thank you very much for watching and beginning our Cyberpunk Fest with us. Please like and subscribe. YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok are our most popular platforms. So join us there on the journey, and we'll see you later.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.